hands of the ruling families who own all of the world's banks, including the privatized central banks. How did they get to be so powerful? It started with the very first banks. In the beginning, banks were a safe place for people to store their gold. When the bankers discovered that people left most of their gold in the bank for safekeeping, they started lending out the gold that didn't belong to them and charging interest on it. Soon, kings and royalty were borrowing gold from the bankers to finance wars. Since wars were extremely good for business, the bankers started stirring up conflicts that led to more wars. Then they lent money out to both sides of the wars and collected huge interest rates. Eventually, the bankers got so rich that they built banks all over the world. They made millions in interest just by loaning out other people's money that didn't belong to them. They bought mansions and fancy clothes and hosted extravagant parties. The royal families of Europe became the banksters' biggest customers and rewarded them with high society titles like Lord and Baron and Sir. Using their money and royal influence, the banksters changed the laws of nations so they could put the world's central banks, mints, and money supply into private hands, their private hands. Out of every $1,000 that each of their customers deposited in their banks, they kept only $100 on hand. They took the rest of their customers' money and made loans with it, invested it, and started up other businesses, like the steel business to create rails for their railway companies, to transport oil for their oil companies. Pretty soon, the banksters' new businesses grew into giant corporations. Those giant corporations turned the world's oceans, lakes, rivers, air, and soil into corporate toilets. When profits from all their oil, mining, and drug company monopolies soared, the banksters became the world's richest men, but their greed had no limits. They wanted to own the entire world, so they put their heads together and came up with an ingenious scheme to take control of all of the world's money and riches. Whoever owns all of the world's money, they said, owns the world. Using their media corporations, they launched a gigantic advertising campaign. They told people they no longer had to save up their money and wait for all the things they wanted in life. They could have everything they ever dreamed of right now. All they needed was a shiny plastic card. People rushed to fill up their wallets with shiny plastic cards instead of money. Like lottery winners, they went on drunken buying sprees and bought everything in sight. All the things they couldn't afford. Nobody even noticed when their hard-earned paychecks were automatically deposited in the bank without ever being cashed. Suddenly, people's bills, fines, taxes, and purchases were automatically deleted from their accounts, and paying by check quickly became unfashionable. Eventually, money was phased out altogether and replaced with units of credit, which were really nothing more than numbers on a computer screen. The next thing the banksters did was replace people's plastic cards with their newest invention, barcode tattoos. These barcode tattoos contained all of a person's private credit information and could be invisibly tattooed onto people's wrists. Since having a wrist tattoo was like having an invisible debit card, and since nobody could steal it from you, everybody rushed to get one. All people had to do to buy whatever they wanted in life was scan their wrist tattoo over a scanner, and so the power for people to buy their most basic necessities in life fell completely into the hands of the banksters. Suddenly, people couldn't buy food, medicine, or even a cup of coffee without scanning their wrist tattoo. Eventually, people sobered up from their drunken spending sprees.
What do you mean you got no money?
They realized they had traded their hard-earned money for nothing more than a bunch of numbers on a computer screen. Their real money had become virtually unreal. Not only did the banksters own all of the world's money, they now had the power to delete a person's lifetime of savings. But why would these friendly banksters do such an evil thing? To force people's cooperation. This futuristic scenario isn't as futuristic as it sounds. Invisible wrist tattoos with all of a person's credit information have already been developed. So what can you do to take back control over your money before the banksters phase out the world's money system? Withdraw your money from their banks. By putting your money in their banks, you are enriching and empowering them with control over your money and eventually over your life. Cut up your credit and debit cards. Pay only with cash or money order or certified check.
What are you doing?
People are under the illusion that their money is safe in the bank and that the banksters are honest. The truth is, the money you put in their banks isn't really there. Although there hasn't been a global economic crash since the 1930s, another crash could happen at any time and without warning. Economic crashes don't just happen. They are made to happen. Economic booms and busts are controlled by how much money the banksters put in circulation through their loans and interest rates. People believe Alan Greenspan, who announces U.S. interest rates, works for the Fed, and that the Fed is the U.S. government. The Fed is not the U.S. government. The Fed is the privately owned Federal Reserve banks, which are owned and controlled by the banksters. Every day, the banksters move trillions of dollars around the world's banking and financial markets. They decide if the markets go up or down, soar or crash. But why in the world would they want to crash the markets? To destroy people's confidence in the money system and create a dependent, cashless society. According to the Zionist plan written by Adam Weishaupt and Albert Pike, the ruling families will bankrupt the middle class and repossess their private property. They will reinstate the military draft and continue disarming nations until there's no one left to disarm. They will make it illegal to possess a firearm or any other weapon that could be used to resist them. When the crash does come, they'll blame it on the phony war on terror, which they control and finance on both sides. So what else can you do to take back control over your own money? Take all of your money out of the rigged stock markets and money markets. Cash in your treasury bills, bonds, and retirement savings plans. Most of the retirement funds have already been looted. Trade in your paper money for something of real value like gold, silver, and precious metals and stones. So where can you put your cash and valuables besides the bank? In a personal safe or a very good hiding place. It will prove to be much safer than the bank. It's not the neighborhood thieves you have to worry about, it's the global thieves. By keeping your hard-earned money and valuables out of the banks and stock markets, you are depriving the banksters of money for their wars, weapons, and mass murder. You are taking back control of your own money. You know where it is, and it's available when you need it. No interest, no service charges, no bank machines. Many people are under the illusion that their money is printed by the government. Money is not printed by the government. It is printed privately by the banksters, who stamp it with their Masonic symbolism. Some community groups are creating their own system of money and buying and selling